Hope you guys all had a happy Thanksgiving. I'm going to ruin it now. The subject today, we've kind of been talking the last couple of weeks. Each of us pastors took maybe what you might call under our nuts and bolts, Christianity 101. We've been taking the last few weeks shared human experiences, I would call them. And it's funny how they fell. We all kind of ended up taking what we're experts in. So Brent had anxiety, and Chad had contentment, and then I'm going to take mine today. And I didn't realize it was going to fall on like Thanksgiving week, like it's bad, but it is what it is. Hopefully it ends well. So we're going to talk about that thing that we don't talk about in the church, that thing that's taboo, that thing that's shameful. Starts with a D. It's depression. So you're welcome. Glad you came to church today. All right. A few months ago, there was a guy that came up over at Community Bible Church, where Jeff Welch is. It's an old friend of Jeff's from Sacramento. I think he's at a church. He pastors a church, I think called North Point or something. His name is Joshua Lane. A couple of you were at that class, I think. It was a Thursday night on depression, or Christianity and depression, or how the Christian should view depression. And I went to take one of my children because they deal with depression, but really it was selfishly for me because all my life I have dealt and had various bouts and seasons of depression. And it just reminded me, hearing this guy once more, how important it is that we talk about stuff like this once in a while in the church. When I was young and I was dealing with stuff and feeling stuff and processing stuff and experiencing stuff that I didn't know about, that I knew that was off, that was the last place I knew I could go and get answers. Because we kind of, it was a shameful thing. Like I said, it was taboo in the church, and I really think that should change. One of our greatest challenges in how we view depression is that in everything in the world around us tells us that the chief goal in life is to be happy. That's why we exist. That's what life's all about. That's what God put us here for, is to be happy. It's in our shows, it's in our commercials, it's in our music, it's in our social media, heck, it's even in our founding documents, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So you can't argue with that. That must be what we're doing here, you know? So when we can't find it or achieve it, but instead find ourselves living in a state of the opposite, it's easy to wonder what's wrong with us. It's easy for me to wonder what's wrong with me when I'm not able to find that which I'm supposed to be finding. It's easy to wonder what my problem is, and that's exactly what it is. It's with me. It's with me. Now, I'm no expert. You're going to find this immediately as we move through this. And by the way, I mentioned Joshua Lane. I've kind of had developed over the years my own theology of depression, but I really liked the way that he formatted and laid out a lot of what he brought. So I'm going to steal some of his as far as format and then just kind of mix in some of mine. I'm absolutely no expert in the clinical sense, in the clinical ins and outs of depression, but I am someone who's been frequently acquainted, like I said, with it at various points in my life. And I've recently wrestled with it. Recently, like within the last couple of years, I've gone into a dark spot that I think by the grace of God I'm crawling out of a little bit right now. So this is really kind of fresh for me. And like I said, part of what depression is really good at is telling you that something's wrong with you. And it doesn't do that in kind and gentle ways. It can be pretty mean. It can be quite the bully. So depression is not just this like effective dimmer switch, like on your feelings and your emotions, but it's also a really good accuser. A really good accuser, a bully. You have amounted to nothing. You have accomplished nothing. You have no purpose. You have no value. You have no meaning, leading to no motivation in your life. You're a failure. You have failed. You will fail. And then in the midst of those accusations and mental assaults, the depression convinces you that these things are your actual identity, that that's who you are, that because you're valueless and your life is meaningless, that's all you and it will ever be. Thus, you start playing the part. Defeatism, right? You're trapped in it. You're believing it to be real and true and all that will be. And this is a miserable darkness, which just breeds more depression. It's just circular. Right? Depression, or to be depressed, is simply to be of low spirit. That's all it means. I'm sure, again, if you talk to a professional in the field, that they'd be able to kick into all the dynamics and the nuances and parse it all out real clean. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's to be of low spirit, whether there's a reason for it or even if there ain't. Okay? So you can be conscious of your life being pretty good around you in the moment, right? Current blessings and goodness going on in your life, and still be of low spirit, which then just makes you feel guilty. And this, in some ways, threatens to be even more of a miserable darkness for the Christian. Because the Christian knows that we are supposed to have, if we're Christians, the joy down in our hearts, right? Am I the only one that grew up singing that? Thank you for not making it into something more. So then when we don't have the joy down in our hearts, what does that mean? Right? Like, what does that do? What does it threaten? Well, it threatens our assurance of salvation. Like the only thing that we have going for us, right? Because if you have Jesus, I've been told by other Christians, you have joy. And if you don't have joy, then it must mean that you don't have Jesus. And this game just gets played. So let's see if we can maybe find this is going to be so generic. This is going to be so oversimplified today. We don't have time. Let's just see if we can gain a basic biblical construct this morning through a biblical lens for this thing called depression, because the church should talk about it once in a while. Let's start in Genesis 3. You could have guessed that, right? Genesis chapter 3. I'm going to move around a lot. If you're quick draw, if you got quick hands, then try to come along. Otherwise, just take notes, and you can go back and visit all this later, or just listen. Just listen. Genesis chapter 3. We have this little thing occur called the fall. Adam and Eve make a poor decision, right? And then God shows up and he hands out report cards or sentences based on what they've earned, right? What they've done, first to Satan, then to the woman, then to the man. I'm just going to read 16 through 19 to the woman and the man, what God says. To the woman he said, verse 16, I will surely multiply your pain and childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desires shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. And to Adam, he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree which I commanded you not to, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. And by the sweat of your face you shall eat the bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you will return. So in the beginning, everything broke, okay? That's my summary. Everything got harder. Everything changed. This is why life for everyone is physically and mentally hard. It's because of what we see here. Joshua Lane said that kids today have a word for this. It's called adulting. Adults have a word for it. It's called life, right? And what specifically made life harder How did it get harder? Well, in three primary ways that we see here, it got harder: through labor, pain, and relational challenge. These are the three things that we have listed here. First, labor. In what? Things that are new? No. Things that are pre-existing became hard. Right? Be fruitful and multiply was said pre-fall, not post-fall. In other words, women were having babies before the fall. But post-fall, that process, that experience became laborious. It became challenging. It became painful. Same with what he says to Adam. Part of the curse wasn't, you have to go work, bro. Sorry. No, they were put in the garden in the beginning, pre-fall, to work the garden. Work is good. Not a problem. Work, though, post-fall becomes laborious. Everything got hard as a result of the fall, right? Pain, number two. Another thing that enters. I don't know how many times it says it here in these few lines that we read, right? So physical hurt, physical weakness, mortality, okay? All those things in our body that reminds us, oh, this thing's got a shelf life. Like this thing, right? There's an expiration date on this thing that I'm walking around in, and it ain't perfect. Like I got to be careful with it even, or I'm going to do something that ain't going to feel good, right? That came too. And it's funny when we break something in our bodies or whatever, what happens? Whatever's broken immediately tells your brain, right, that something's wrong. It's your brain that discovers that. I remember this when I busted my femur, and I won't go into details because it's not fantastic. But the initial impact where I broke my leg, I didn't feel anything immediately until I rolled over, then my leg kind of flopped over, and then my brain started feeling the nerve endings and everything firing off and going, oh, no, like something's wrong with your leg, right? That's the way it works. And so then I went and I got surgery, praise God, because you can do that on most limbs when it comes to breaks, and the dude did a fantastic job. And so I got to go back to skateboarding afterward, right? Fixed. Sleep injuries. How many of you have that? This is, right? Because half this room's pretty old. And all you have to do to have a sleep injury is sleep really good. Just have a really good night's sleep and wake up and the neck's jacked and you can't move it, or the arm or the shoulder, right? And that's your brain going like, well, something's not right here, right? Something's broke. So our brain tells us when something in our body is broke or off or not right, but what do you do when something inside your brain is broken? Like, what do you do then? Like, where do you go to get that fixed? Where do you go to get that repaired? So this too has been affected due to the fall, resulting in mental weakness and challenge. And so there can be like an inherent depression, which means that it's in the gene pool, it's in the DNA, it's in the makeup. Some people are wired with more of it, unfortunately, and it's just inherited. Or we can experience, and this is much more common for us, what's sometimes called situational depression, where an event or a series of events breaks our brain or reveals that broken part of our brain without us maybe even detecting it till we get a ways down the road. And this is where I've been lately in the last couple of years of my life, is over about the last 6 years of my life, I've had a sequence of events that have been, to say the least, a challenge. And I've always been the oak in my family, right? I'm supposed to be. I'm the head of the house. I'm the pillar. I'm the strength. When no one has strength, they'll come and lean on me, and I have the right things to say. And I show them how to walk through it. And I thought I was doing that until I got down the road a bit, and these things piled up, and I realized that this thing had the upper hand on me. And I was starting to visit, I basically visited a zip code in my brain, in my heart, that I've never been to before. And there were no street lights there, you know. And I started thinking things that I've never thought before, thought that I would never think. And I started having questions that I thought I would never ask before. And it all went dark for me, really dark. I think maybe some of you can relate to this. It really, I think, became clear that I was maybe farther gone than I thought when I went to the doctor for my yearly checkup one year. I go once a year. And it's like nothing. Checkup. And they give you those forms, those catalogs that you got to fill out. Right? And it's supposed to be about health things because I'm going to a doctor. I'm not going to a psychiatrist. But now, most of that catalog has to do with your mental health rather than your physical health. And I used to, when they first started doing it years ago, I remember peeking through there going, this is ridiculous. People actually fill this stuff out. I'm in a doctor's office. I'm not here for these things. And I would read some of the questions and be like, you know, and the questions would be something like this. In the last, how many days out of 7 days do you think this? Or how many days out of 7 days have you felt this or experienced this, right? And I'd be like, 0, 0, 0, 0. You know what I mean? Just, I'm rad. Until a couple years ago when I went back in, and I'm waiting for my name to be called, and I start flipping through these, and I start going like, gosh, I wouldn't answer 0 on that. And I probably wouldn't answer 0 on that. In fact, I might even answer high on some of these. And at this point, I'm kind of looking around, hoping that nobody knows what I'm doing or how I'm answering my test, because I'm ashamed of the way that I'm answering my test, because I'm a Christian. I'm a pastor. I'm not supposed to think this way. I'm not supposed to score these scores on questions like that. What would happen if someone knew that I did? Am I disqualified? Right? All these things start going through my head, and I realize, man, I have really gone to a place. And here's the weird thing, guys, is my life, yes, I've had a series of things happen, but like, I got a good wife that treats me well. I got good dudes around me that treat me well. Like, I got a strong crew. You know what I mean? Spiritually. Like, things in my life or the way I live is ridiculous. Like, you know what I mean? You guys, being here with you guys and the way that you love us and the way that you pray for it, insane. You know what I mean? But it was just a culmination of all these things that had taken me to this horrible, horrible place. So the result of the culmination of all those events piling up in me reminded me that my brain is broken in ways. It's broken. It's not quite right. I'm not as mentally strong as I thought I was or I hoped I would be at 51 years old and 35 years in the Lord. You know? Why did I fall into such a dark place? This is what I would ask. Because I'm a bad person? Because I'm a bad Christian? Because I sinned? No, it's because our brains are broken and susceptible to breaks just like our bodies due to the fall. Due to the fall. So in short, why depression? Where does it come from? The same place all other things come from that make life hard. The garden. The fall is the event that we can trace back to as the starting point of our challenge. Every negative, shared human experience that we face, even every relational breakdown, which is the third one, right? Did you see that there? It affected our relationships. First, man and God, then man and woman, then man with ourselves. All the way around. So here's a summation of what happened there at the fall. Life became a struggle, and we are no longer all that we're meant to be. We cool with that? Stuff changed outside of us, and stuff changed inside of us. This is a biblical worldview, and it explains a lot, doesn't it? Depression, like all other bad words, made its grand entrance there. So let's get the answer to this question out of the way right now. Is having depression a sin? No. No, it is not. But it is the result of sin coming into the world. Next question. Do we see this existing in our Bible? Do we see this existing in our Bible characters? Well, yeah. Yeah, we do. It's there. It may not be labeled depression, so we miss it quite a bit of the time, but it's absolutely there. Where am I going to go first? I'll go there third. Job. Go to Job real quick. Chapter 3, set up to Job. You guys all know the story. God has a meeting, right, with his celestial beings. Just to check in. Had check-ins every once in a while, and Satan shows up, and God's like, what have you been up to? And he's like, not a lot. Like I've been cruising around trying to find something to do. I'm bored. I can't find anything worth doing. And he's like, well, have you considered like the most righteous man on earth? My servant Job. And he's like, you know what? The only reason why he's righteous and he loves you is because you've outfitted him. Like his life is rad. You've like given him everything, and then you stuck a fence up around it so that nobody can take it away. But if you took that stuff away, he wouldn't love you, right? And God's like, okay, go for it. You can have Job. Just can't kill him. And within a matter of hours, basically, Job's life is turned upside down, and he loses everything. Everything. And then in Job chapter 3, we first see Job open his mouth after this goes down and talk to God. And he says this, let the day perish on which I was born, and the night that said a man is conceived. Let that day be darkness. May God above not seek it, nor light shine upon it. Let gloom and deep darkness claim it. Let clouds dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. That night, let thick darkness seize it. Let it not rejoice among the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Behold, let that night be barren. Let no joyful cry enter it. Let those curse it who curse the day, who are ready to rouse up Leviathan. Let the stars of its dawn be dark. Let it hope for light, but have none. Nor see the eyelids of the morning, because it did not shut the doors of my mother's womb, nor hide trouble from my eyes. Look over at 24, the end of that chapter. For my sighing comes instead of my bread, and my groanings are poured out like water, for the thing that I fear comes upon me, and what I dread befalls me. 26, I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, but trouble comes. So Job has this series of events occur that plunge him into darkness, situational depression, you might say, which snowballs into a state of despair and hurt and sadness, so much that he hates his birthday. He doesn't want any more. He doesn't want any more birthdays. Nobody celebrate my birthday. I'm not going to celebrate it anymore, and I don't want anybody else to celebrate it either. I'm over it. Joshua Lang, the dude that I went and listened to, it was kind of cute. He said the tradition of making a wish and blowing out the candle probably came from Job. Like he was probably so mad, like when he wrote this, like someone brought him a cake and he just stuck something on fire in it and said, I don't want no more birthdays, and blew it out. And that's probably where the tradition came from. We can't prove it biblically, but kind of maybe. Like there's so much internal turmoil going on in Job that he wished he'd never been born. Wished he'd never been born. Like, just forget that I have. This is Job, the most righteous man, God's man, and he's undone. He's beyond depressed, you might say. He needs a suicide hotline number, right? Job needs a hug. We need to give this man a hug. It's funny, a lot of times when we're in a really bad spot or we have a friend or a family member that's that's going through it, that's in a dark place. We oftentimes will refer to Job, right? That's kind of the wild card as far as like the deep darkies. But he ain't the only one. Anyone know about Jeremiah? Yeah. Listen to what Jeremiah says, if I can get there. There it is. Look at that. Seriously? One flip. Bingo. Didn't even have a dealio in there. We all know who Jeremiah was, right? He was a prophet, a voice, sent by God to God's people to tell them to turn from false idols and false gods of the nations around them back to him. Simple enough, right? Let me read chapter 20, just a few lines here, starting in verse 7. This is Jeremiah. "O Lord, you have deceived me, and I was deceived. You are stronger than I, and you have prevailed. I have become a laughingstock all the day. Everybody mocks me. For whenever I speak, I cry out, I shout violence and destruction. For the word of the Lord has become for me a reproach and a derision all day long. If I say I will not mention him or speak any more in his name, there is in my heart as there were a burning of fire shut up in my bones, and I am weary with holding it, and I cannot. For I hear many whispering, terrors on every side. Denounce him. Let us denounce him. Say, all my close friends, watching for my fall, perhaps he will be deceived, and then we can overcome him and take our revenge on him." 14. "Cursed be the day on which I was born." Jeremiah 2. This is conclusion. "Cursed be the day for which I was born, the day when my mother bore me. Let it not be blessed. Cursed be the man who brought the news to my father. A son is born to you, making him very glad. Let that man be like the cities that the Lord overthrew without pity. Let him hear a cry in the morning and an alarm at noon, because he did not kill me in the womb. So my mother would have been my grave and her womb forever great. Why did I come out from the womb? To see toil and sorrow and spend my days in shame?" This is a bold claim, a heavy claim against the Lord due to Jeremiah's depressed state. And notice, Jeremiah isn't coming from the same place that Job is with his, right? Like Jeremiah is not in despair due to the loss of everything that he loves. He's in despair for doing what God asked him to do. He's like, you tricked me. You told me to do something that has done nothing but bring me to a dark place. Pain, loneliness. I was faithful to do what you told me to do. I did, and my life has gone sideways. It's unraveled. Those who were once my friends are even plotting my downfall. They wish I was dead. I'm a laughingstock to them. I am worse off now than I was before, all because I've done what you asked me to do. That's not supposed to happen. You know the weirdest part about this? This is in your Bible. You know what I'm saying? If we're thinking apologetically here, like most atheists, critics, believe that this is a conspiracy. This was just written by a bunch of dudes who wanted to make up a deity that we would all come to and follow. If that's true, why in the world are they putting stuff like this in there? Doesn't show very well. If you noticed in verse 9, Jeremiah's plight is, it is better to be tormented. Is it better to be tormented from the outside or the inside? Outside meaning horizontally. People outside of me, circumstances outside of me, things that are going on around me, situational stuff, right? Stuff he's experiencing in life. Inside meaning vertically. His relationship with God, where that thing goes on. He's tormented outside and inside if you look at verse 9. He's not holding back what he has to say to God, but he does know which one is worse ultimately. And that's to forsake the vertical. He's like, I'm going to stick with you. I'm going to let you know how I feel right now. I ain't happy about it. But I mean, where else am I going to go? What else am I going to do? I'm going to keep, I'm going to stay with you. They're both torment, they're both darkness, they're both despair, they're both depression. And so he too goes on like Job to say, cursed was the day that I was born. Again, Jeremiah 2, no more birthdays. Job, Jeremiah, don't want birthdays anymore, right? Have you ever been that depressed? And you're not even one of God's prophets, you know? How about David? Don't go there. I won't go there. Just a couple, right? Have you ever read his laments in the Psalms, right? Jeff? A man after God's own heart, David is. My soul is in deep anguish. How long, O Lord, will it be this way? Why do you stand so far off, Lord? Why do you hide yourself from me? All your waves have swept over me. My strength fails me. The light has gone out from my eyes, and you know it. You see it. And you stay over there. Guess what David feels? He feels forsaken. He feels lonely. He feels depressed. How about Solomon, Ecclesiastes? I think we taught through this book, like 5-6 years ago? We went through Ecclesiastes, right? This is a man who literally got everything that anybody could ever want due to his pursuit of happiness. He got everything that's supposed to make you happy. All of it. And his conclusion? Depression. Depression. Low spirit. It's all empty. It's all vanity. It's funny that our Bibles contain so much of this. It doesn't try to hide it, but the church does. Why? Why do we try to act like it isn't there? Or if it shows up, we try to excommunicate it, suppress it, hide it. Is it so we can pretend? So that we can pretend that there's nothing that exists if you come to Jesus other than the joy down in our hearts, right? Is that the gospel? Is that the best piece of propaganda that we have? Or is it, I know someone who's felt like you feel? I know someone who's felt like you feel. I know someone who identifies with your plight. Come and see. Come and hear. Come and meet him. Come and see a man who was despised and rejected by men like Jeremiah, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. Come and see him. One who entered by choice the human experience to experience all of what it is that you and I experience. Who spent far more time alone than he did in crowds. A man who suffered the loss of a dear friend and wept. A man who was betrayed and stabbed in the back by his best friends. A man who was in such a place of inner turmoil that he sweat drops of blood alone in a garden while his buddies could not stay awake. A man who hung on a cross as a public spectacle of humiliation. A man who, while he hung there, didn't just experience the collective rejection and hostility of the world, but also of the Father. My God, why have you forsaken me? Brothers and sisters, we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Hebrews 4:15. So guess who I want to follow in my depression? Guess who I want to stay close to in my darkest days and my darkest seasons? The one who went through it much worse and came out the other side to things much better. I want to stick by him. And so in many ways, I think that if there's ever been a group of people that have walked this earth that are saddened by what they see here, it should be Christians. In a lot of ways, this makes sense to me. Not that we should walk around kicking rocks, dressed in black, right? Listening to emo and goth, cutting ourselves. You know what I mean? I don't think we should be doing that. But if there's anyone who's in tune to and brokenhearted by what it is that they see around them for what it is, it should be the Christian. That things are not right. So what's the way forward? I mean, if I didn't ask willfully to get into this state of depression, right? How do I get out of it? And if I can't get out of it, what are my options? What's my path forward? Like therapy, drugs, isolation? Maybe the better question is, what was Job's and Jeremiah's and David's and Solomon's and even Jesus' path forward? That's the better question. The short answer is they refused to stay away from God. Not the one you wanted, no. They refused to stay away from God. I mean, think about it. What do all these guys have in common in what we read here today? You know? They're all talking to God. They're letting him have it. It ain't pretty. It's not pretty. I can relate. But you know what? God's a big boy. He can handle it. He can handle it. They're going to him still. They're talking to him still. They are in turmoil and they are in a dark spot and they have no idea when it's going to end. But you know what they know ain't going to end? Going to him. Where else are you going to go? Right? Like Peter says to Jesus, you know. Everyone else is walking away because of what Jesus is doing and teaching, right? He looks at the disciples. You guys going to leave too? Peter's like, where are we going to go? There ain't nowhere else to go. You alone have the words of life. Even though these guys are angry with God and I can get in this place where I am dark with God, I know that he alone still has the words of life. There is nowhere else. There is nothing else. This is it. He is true. They're all going to him still, as ugly as it is. So what we do is we continue forward in spite of our internal turmoil and mental challenges, to him, knowing that the relief may not come today, but it is coming. It is coming. And I'm down with that. I think I can handle the small window of time of depression that I'm plagued with from time to time in light of the eternal reality which awaits me just around the corner, just up ahead. I can deal with it. I can get through with it, right? Have you ever wondered why the Bible doesn't give us like specifics on how to rid ourselves of depression? That'd be rad, right? Like if in one of our epistles we actually had a chapter dedicated to the ins and outs of depression with like a real prescription of how to cure it, you know? It's just not there. You know why? Because life is hard for everyone due to the fall. It just is. Life is hard for everyone due to the fall. Therefore, because life is inevitably hard for everyone, we all need a shared prescription that covers all of our shared human experiences. Not something that necessarily removes them, but something that allows us to move through them. I think that Acts chapter 2 gives us a really good shared prescription. Again, this is probably going to fall short in what you were hoping for. I think it's bigger than we think it is. Here's what Acts chapter 2 says. Those that believed and were saved, devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, what we're doing, the fellowship, one to another's, breaking of bread, and the prayers. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. This is the shared prescription for everybody, no matter what they come in here with, is that they press into the inner circle of that which God is building and where he is found. It's his church. Doing that which the church does. All right? Some of you are like, that's it? Really? That's it? Like, yeah, that's it. That is it. You know what we need? We need a place where we're constantly centered around the perfect person and work of Jesus while perfectly belonging there, while having all things in common. That's the statement I love about this, right? Is that in this place that's described here by Luke in Acts chapter 2, it's a place where you actually belong. And it's a place where we all have something shared that transcends everything else that maybe we don't have shared. And that's Christ. And that's what he's doing in us, and that's what he's doing with us as he builds his church. Right? Having all things in common does not mean that they all shared their depression with each other. You know what I mean? If you do that, if you come in here like that, we're not even going to let you share during share time, okay? You can't bring the rest of us down. We're not doing that, right? Doesn't mean that. It means that they did share and carry each other's burdens of pre-existent brokenness as they look up and forward together to Christ. That's what it means. The author and the perfecter of our faith, right? In other words, if there's a community that exists where broken people are embraced, welcomed, cared for, loved well, it should be the church. It should be this. Why? Because of a shared Savior, a shared overcomer, right? That shared in our human experiences. In other words, I do believe this statement in Acts chapter 2 is a prescription for all people, no matter what condition you come in here with. Press into the church. It's a prescription to come closer. How? This thing called the body of Christ. So the voice of God to all those who hurt and despair and wrestle day to day with that which we've inherited from the fall of man is come closer. Come inside. And that is best achieved here on earth through the church. Of course, at the end of the day, what is it that we all need most? I don't need to get rid of my depression most. I need to know that I'm forgiven. I need that ailment to be cured. And brothers and sisters, wouldn't you know, that's what Jesus specialized in. That's the whole reason he came into our human experience, is that he might provide a righteousness that you and I could not go buy or search for or work for or find anywhere else. Right? We need an alien righteousness. And Christ came and went through everything that he went through so that you and I could have his. And that's what we really need. That's what we really need. You want to hear kind of a cool promise? We'll close with this. In this world you will have tribulation. But take heart, I've overcome the world. That's something. Right? In other words, your depression, your dark thoughts, your dark feels will not last forever. They will not last forever. They do not have the final say. It is not the final state. Hallelujah. Right? It's temporary. We look ahead to the extermination of all mental challenges, knowing that what we feel right now is not how we will always feel. Right? Because he who is faithful is promised. I love the little peek behind the curtain of what the Lord is doing in places like Revelation 21:5, which Tricia just happened to bring up. Behold, Jesus says, I am making all things new. I am making all things new. What's he doing right now? This. Making all things new. I can wait. So happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully we redeemed it enough. All right? You're like, I'm so glad I came to church today. You should be. Just for that last little nugget. He's making all things new. Lord, we thank you that we're not alone in the things that we often think we're alone in. Help us, God, to see above and beyond, to lift our heads just a little higher when we get into those spots so that we can get a small glimpse of the fact the battle is won and you are right now constructing something that is quantum beyond anything we can ever imagine, where none of these human experiences, these negative ones that plague us, are allowed. And so we thank you that it won't always be this way. We thank you that you don't just stand far off and tell us to go do a bunch of things, that we're unable to do, but that you came to where we are and you experienced every bit of what we experience. Thank you for giving us something to see how it's done. We thank you most of all that our sin has nothing on us. Our depression may be for other reasons or triggered for other reasons, but it can't be that. We are clean, and it is finalized, and it's because of your accomplishment. And so we thank you for loving us and seeing us long before we had a thought for you. And we praise you and we worship you that what we see around us in this world has a shelf life. Like it has an expiration date. It will not always be the way it is right now. So cause us to be faithful, steadfast, stubborn in going to you always. Amen.